The Life of Jack Sparrow. Jack Sparrow was a legendary pirate of the seven seas and the irreverent trickster of the Caribbean, a captain of equally dubious morality and sobriety, a master of self-promotion and self-interest. Jack fought a constant and losing battle with his own best tendencies. Jack's first love was the sea, and his second, his beloved ship, the Black Pearl. Welcome to the Amagi. In today's video, we're going over the life of Jack Sparrow. Before we begin, we publish a new video every week, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. The Amagi's reach stretches beyond just this channel, so if you're a fan of us, please consider subscribing to our other channels and following us on all our social media. Help us reach our goal of passing 100,000 followers on all our accounts by the end of the year. And with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Early life. Jack Sparrow was born to Edward Teague and an unknown woman on a pirate ship caught in the middle of a typhoon. He was named Jack after his uncle and Teague's brother, Jack. Jack grew up in a tumultuous household full of outlaws at Shipwreck Cove. He spent most of his youth unsure whether Edward Teague was really his parent, frequently referring to him as the man who might be father. Despite Jack's resentment of him, he respected the fact that Teague was always there for him when he needed him most, such as when he nearly got his hand cut off by the pirate Rusty Knickers, or when Jack was almost sold into slavery by Captain Lucille Graven. Jack was determined to follow in his father's footsteps and become a captain of a ship, rather than just some ordinary pirate like the majority of his relatives, explaining his insistence on being referred to as captain well into adulthood. At some point during his childhood, Jack met a boy named Benny and taught him that trick with the kite and the key. As a teenager, Jack served as a cabin boy on several pirate ships, including the Troubadour of Captain Teague and the Koldunya of Borya Polichnik. As a member of Teague's crew, he visited many countries and ports, including Singapore. However, he became fed up with his hectic life in a pirate family and the torture he suffered at the hands of his grandmama. One night, he snuck by candlelight into the study to consult the Pirata Codex, and coming upon a section on freedom and the need for pirates to make their own decisions, decided he was completely justified in running away. After escaping out the window, Jack stowed away aboard a merchant ship to reach Tortuga. The Sword of Cortés. Jack had few worldly possessions, and even those were stolen on the island. In an attempt to reclaim his property, Jack accidentally stole a sack containing the scabbard of the Sword of Cortés from Captain Torrance, a vicious pirate captain with the ability to control storms. Learning of its magical nature from a barmaid named Arabella Smith, Jack set off to track down the Sword of Cortés itself. After Arabella led Jack to an abandoned ship, the Barnacle, he was given command, and following a sword fight that Jack lost, found his second crew member in a man named Fitzwilliam P. Dalton III. Having braved a storm conjured by Torrance, Jack, Arabella, and Fitzwilliam soon encountered two more sailors, Tumen and Jean Magloire, the latter providing one further crew member in the form of his cat, Constance Magloire, who was once Jean's sister before being transformed by Tia Dalma. With a ship and a crew, not to mention part of the treasure of Stone-Eyed Sam, a now-dead former pirate king with a fabled stone eye who was said to be holding the sword, Captain Jack Sparrow set off to find the elusive Sword of Cortés. The crew was confronted by Captain Torrance, though Jack was able to counter his control of lightning by splashing him with rainwater collected in his appropriated hat. He claimed that he had taught a young Benjamin Franklin this trick and hoped Benny would remember it. Fight for freedom. Jack's crew later happened upon a group of mermaids whose song made most of the crew act upon their deepest desires. However, Jack proved immune to their song since his only true desire was freedom. Unfortunately for Jack, poorly thought-out negotiations with the Siren's minions, the merfolk, forced him into a deal that would cost him the thing Jack valued most, his freedom, should he ever find the Sword of Cortés. For the time being, he continued his search for the sword, ultimately finding it in the possession of Left-Foot Louis on Isla Fortuna. Jack helped defeat Louis and stopped Arabella from killing the pirate out of revenge for the supposed murder of her mother. With the sword and its scabbard in his possession, Jack was able to recite an incantation that unlocked its power, but also caused the spirit of Herman Cortés to materialize. Jack, wishing to use the sword's full power, was unaware that Cortés, in teaching Jack how to correctly wield the sword, was ensuring he, Cortés, would ultimately regain control of the weapon for his own dastardly use. Jack was sent to collect the Eye of Stone-Eyed Sam, recently given to the merfolk, meaning Jack was forced to return to Isla Sirena. There, he fought 2 iguana monsters for his freedom, and obtained the eye from Tia Dalma. Tia Dalma also reminded Jack that a dangerous foe was pursuing him, a thought that Jack did not savor. Sparrow returned to Cortés and unlocked the eye, freeing the spirit of Montezuma, who fought and defeated Cortés. Jack decided to give the sword to Tia Dalma, realizing it contained too much power to wield. After a further meeting with her, who warned him of dangers he would yet face, Jack and his crew set out for the Yucatan Peninsula, home of Tumen, and further adventure. The Sun-and-Stars Medallion. Unfortunately for Sparrow and his crew, Tumen's village held its own set of challenges. The crew became the main suspects when the Sun-and-Stars amulet was stolen from the village and were banished from the island. Jack resolved to track down the real culprits, whom they happened upon in a hotel in New Orleans. The thief, Madame Minuit, fought for her possession of the amulet, a blow from which turning some of Jack's teeth bronze, though her slave, Tim Hawk, turned on her and helped Jack's crew escape. Jack welcomed him aboard the Barnacle. Moments later, the ship was confronted by La Fleur de l'Amour, captained by Laura Smith, Arabella's long-lost mother. The crew was teleported aboard, where Jack was controlled by Silverback and Leftfoot Louie, both of whom launched an attack on Jack's crew. The fight was broken up by Laura, though Jack remained suspicious of both pirates and eavesdropped on a conversation between them, uncovering their plans to mutiny against their captain. This led to a fight during which Jack stole Silverback's gem, connecting it to his medallion and making both Silverback and Louie disappear. Jack was happy to return to the Barnacle, though Laura kept her daughter aboard La Fleur de l'Amour. Following this, Jack returned to New Orleans, where he was confronted for a final time by Madame Minuit, Silverback, and Louie, who merged to form a giant 3-headed serpent that Jack barely managed to defeat. Jack's teeth were turned into gold when the Sun-and-Stars amulet was destroyed. With the battle won, Jack's crew decided to return to their respective homes, leaving only Jack and Fitzwilliam aboard the Barnacle. Suddenly, the vessel was confronted by the Flying Dutchman, and Jack met Davy Jones for the first time. The Dance of the Hours. Davy Jones was after Fitzwilliam's watch, which was able to stop time. Using the watch's power, Jack and Dalton escaped to a nearby island. After wandering for a few days, they were captured by angry natives and sacrificed to Chantico. They escaped again using the Timekeeper and ran to an Aztec temple. There, they discovered that they are on Isla Esqueletica, while Stone-Eyed Sam still reigned as king. They were captured and taken to Stone-Eyed Sam. Once again, they escaped using the Timekeeper and escaped the temple. By now, the island was completely disrupted. There were prehistoric creatures roaming around, and Stone-Eyed Sam was very much alive and in control of the Sword of Cortés, and to make matters worse, Captain Torrance was around and wanted his revenge on Jack. After escaping being killed by the lava of the island's volcano, Jack and Fitzwilliam were told by Chantico that they have 12 hours to set everything back to normal or she will kill them. After getting down the volcano by way of hitching a ride on the pterodactyl, the two of them needed the magic of the Dalma's kind and headed back to the Barnacle by traveling underwater under a boat over their heads for air. Once they were on the Barnacle, they were quickly captured by Davy Jones and thrown into the brig of the Flying Dutchman, where they ran into Tia Dalma, who helped them get out and give them a clue as to how to return time back to normal. The watch has to be in the possession of someone who doesn't exist in the present time, and also that person has to drop the watch when it chimes 12. After getting back to the island and realizing that there is only 1 hour left, a sword fight starts between Stone-Eyed Sam and Torrance for control of the Sword of Cortés. During their fight, Jack realized that he had to get Sam to hold the watch to set everything back. So he gets the attention of both him and Torrance when Jack remembers that both of them want revenge on him. Things escalate into a 3-way sword fight with the Sword of Cortés changing hands several times with time running out. Jack carefully throws the watch so that it wraps around Sam's wrist as the watch starts chiming. Just as Jack was knocked down and Sam was about to kill him, the watch chimed for the 12th time, and Tia Dalma pulled it off Sam's wrist, which resulted in time being quickly set back to normal, with Stone-Eyed Sam turning into a skeleton, the bricks crumbling into rubble, and the plant life of the jungle taking over. After Tia Dalma met with Davy Jones and Chantico, while surprising Jack and Fitzwilliam by bowing to her, Jack noticed a pirate ship in the distance and panicked. Both he and Fitzwilliam got back to the Barnacle, where they saw that the pirate ship was being chased by the British Royal Navy ships, as well as the East India Trading Company ships. Fitzwilliam then held his sword to Jack's back and revealed that he had been working with the Navy in an attempt to track down Jack's father, Captain Edward Teague, in order to arrest and hang him. Sins of the Father. Fitzwilliam P. Dalton III is really working for the Royal Navy as a spy and has led Admiral Lawrence Norrington and the whole Royal Navy to Jack and his father, Captain Teague, keeper of the code himself. Jack and his father are taken off of Teague's ship, the Misty Lady, and sent to the brig of Norrington's ship. Aboard the ship is a rum lover and ally of Teague's, Joshua E. Gibbs. He frees Jack, Teague, and his crew. Jack boards the Barnacle to take off a Royal Navy flag and sail away when Fitzwilliam shows up, and then they battle rapidly back and forth. When Jack finally wins, he's about to kill Fitzy when his father stops him. The Royal Navy then wakes up and begins to attack the Misty Lady. Meanwhile, Fitzwilliam somehow follows Teague's commands, and the three of them end up on the Admiral's ship once more. The aristocrat then turns in Teague and Jack, who are hiding behind barrels. A fight breaks out between the two crews, and Jack and Fitzy take at it one more time. Teague and the Admiral fight, and when Teague successfully knocks down the Admiral, his son, James Norrington, is frightened and backs up only to fall overboard. Teague rescues James, and his father chastises him about being saved by a pirate. Teague tells Jack that Fitzy only did what he was told because of his ring, which makes anyone do anything you'd like. In the story's epilogue, he gives Jack the ring and then takes him to Isle Hermosa. Jack gets a new boat, which is only large enough for 1 or 2 people, and sets sail for a new treasure. Poseidon's Peak. After acquiring a new boat, Jack sets off to find the fabled Poseidon's Peak and the treasure it holds. He arrives on a deserted island and runs into a sailor who is badly hurt and has amnesia. Following a night of fitful dreams, the sailor remembers that his name is Bill, and the two of them trek inland to find any clues to where Poseidon's Peak might be. Before long, the two are captured by the natives, with Bill inexplicably able to translate what they're saying, and are challenged to fight for their lives. Jack cheats, and the both of them run into someone very familiar, Constance Magloire, whom the natives worship since she swam out of the sea. After getting away from the natives, Jack has the idea of lashing logs together to make a raft to escape the island, and while they search, they unearth a chariot covered in sea life. They get on the chariot, and it promptly takes them out to sea, where they jump off before it submerges and ends up on a small rock in the middle of the ocean. Jack, in a fit of anger, tosses Constance off the rock, which causes her to lead them to an underwater cavern. Constance proceeds to lead them through tunnels that seem to go in circles until Jack meets a group of people that are very familiar to him, the former crew of the Barnacle, except for Fitzwilliam. Along with Arabella's mother and her crew, Jack was especially glad to see Arabella, but is dismayed when she runs up and kisses Bill, who has regained the rest of his memories, and says that he was rescued by Captain Smith's ship sometime after they had split from Jack. Not too long after this, a group of mermaids, who were of a higher level than the ones Jack had met before, and asked them to keep the items belonging to Poseidon, his trident and his chariot, away from Davy Jones, who would use them to manipulate their kind, and in exchange they would show them how to escape the cavern. Shortly after the request, an unwanted face showed up riding the chariot and wielding the trident of Poseidon, Captain Torrance. Bold New Horizons. In order to retrieve the chariot and the trident, Jack challenges Torrance to a duel to the death, in which Jack is ultimately victorious. The Sirens are then reunited with the chariot and trident, and in gratitude show Jack, the former captain of the Barnacle, Laura Smith, who is a captain of La Fleur de l'Amour, and the Smith's crewmen the escape route. Upon returning to the surface, Jack farewells his ex-crew for the last time and departs, thus ending his teenage adventures. Jack the Sparrow. Following his teenage adventures, Jack bartered a magical compass from Tia Dalma. However, the compass somehow found its way into the hands of Morgan, the pirate captain of the Wicked Wench, whose crew Jack eventually joined, finally embracing the pirate life. It was around that time that the notorious Spanish Royal Navy captain, Armando Salazar decided to exterminate piracy in the Caribbean to avenge the deaths of his father and grandfather. With their powerful galleon, the Silent Mary, Salazar and his crew sank dozens of pirate ships. Facing extermination, the last pirates in the Caribbean joined forces in an attempt to stop Salazar, but in a fierce battle off the coast of the mysterious Devil's Triangle, the Spaniards destroyed most of the pirate fleet, showing no mercy. The Wicked Wench was the last remaining pirate ship, and her dying captain gave his compass to Jack, explaining its power with his last breath. When the compass pointed toward the triangle, Jack quickly formulated a plan on how to defeat Salazar. Climbing into the crow's nest, Jack shouted through the smoke to the pirate hunter, mockingly telling him that he will be spared if he surrenders immediately. Laughing and sliding down the halyard on deck, Jack defiantly raised the black pirate flag, earning the right to call himself Sparrow. He took the helm, steering the wench toward the triangle. Just as Jack expected, the Silent Mary, with Salazar at the helm, quickly followed the pirate vessel into the unknown waters. As the wench approached the entrance into the triangle, Jack ordered the pirates to throw ropes around the nearby reefs of the port side of the ship. The loop caught the reef, tightening and causing the ship to swiftly turn to the left, as Jack Sparrow steered the ship in the same direction, changing the wench's course at the last moment. The Silent Mary stayed on her course, sailing straight ahead. As the Spanish sailed past the wench, Jack glanced at Salazar one last time before the Silent Mary entered the triangle. The Spanish warship quickly hit the nearby rocks, which resulted in a massive explosion that killed the entire crew and sank the ship. With the battle over, every surviving pirate in the wench's crew gave Jack one item as a tribute, including a hat. Return to Shipwreck Cove. Jack eventually returned to Shipwreck Cove, where he became known to all pirate lords, even though Teague wasn't yet prepared to officially recognize Jack as his son. Despite that, Jack joined Teague on several voyages of his ship, the Troubadour. Jack also became a good friend with the French pirate captain Christophe Julien de Rapier. When some mysterious pirate ships began to attack both merchant ships and pirate ships, a meeting was held in the pirate hall in Shipwreck City. Although he wasn't invited, Jack entered the chamber where some of the pirate lords convened because he was interested in meeting Esmeralda, with whom he developed a friendship, and her grandfather Don Rafael, the pirate lord of the Caribbean. Jack also met Hector Barbossa, a pirate captain whose ship, the Cobra, was destroyed by these mysterious rogue pirates. Breaking the code. A few months later, Jack discovered which ship had destroyed Barbossa's ship. It was the sloop Koldunya, captained by Boris Borya Polochnik, the pirate lord of the Caspian Sea. Thanks to Jack's information, Barbossa also identified the ship. To quickly solve the case, Captain Teague summoned Davy Jones, the Lord of the Sea, who identified Borya as the leader of the rogues. Trapped, Borya revealed the names of the other rogue captains, identifying Christophe as one of them. The rogues were quickly imprisoned in the dungeons of Shipwreck City. However, Jack believed that Christophe was innocent, and so he helped him escape. But by doing this, he broke the pirate code, making himself an outlaw in the eyes of the Brethren. During their escape from Shipwreck Island, Christophe's rogues kidnapped Jack, taking him with them. Escape from the rogues. Press-ganged into service on La Vipère, Jack involuntarily served under Christophe for a few weeks. Christophe even started to make plans for making his own fleet, and he asked Jack to join him as captain of one of his vessels. Jack participated in the attack on the Dutch fleet, and after the battle, he met Pharaoh Takara, the ruler of the mythical island of Kerma. Mortally wounded, the old pharaoh gave Jack the magical talisman. Christophe took the talisman from Jack and decided to find Kerma. Not wanting Jack with him anymore, Christophe left him in a longboat on the open sea. Robert Greene, a young pirate on board La Vipère, jumped into the sea and joined Jack in the boat. After they reached land, they joined the East India Trading Company. For the next 5 years, Jack faithfully served the company, sailing across all the 7 seas, eventually reaching the rank of first mate. First mate. When he was 25 years old, Jack sailed aboard the EITC brig Fair Wind as the first mate under Captain Nathaniel Bainbridge. When Bainbridge was killed in a battle with pirates led by Jack's old love interest Esmeralda, now a pirate lord of the Caribbean, Jack took command of the Fair Wind and managed to save the ship and most of its cargo from falling into the hands of Esmeralda's pirates. Cutler Beckett, an EITC director for West Africa, was so impressed that he offered him to take command of Marlin, a slave ship of the company, as her captain. but Sparrow refused to transport slaves, so Beckett gave him command of the Wicked Wench, a merchant vessel of the company. Captain Sparrow. Jack Sparrow and the Wicked Wench were an unbeatable team, and Jack sailed on many voyages for the company. One day, Beckett proposed to Jack that he'd organize a search for the lost island of Kerma, as well as the shining city of Zazura with its treasure-filled labyrinth. Jack embarked on a voyage while assisted by Beckett's house slave, Aisha, who is actually Princess Amynurtis, a member of the Kerman royal family. Jack and Aisha sailed for the Bahamas, where they liberated Aisha's brother, Prince Shabako, because Aisha refused to give Jack the location of the island until her brother was safe. After they sailed back for Africa, the wench was attacked by Boris Palachnik's rogue pirates. Aisha's magic destroyed the pirate ship, but the Wicked Wench was badly damaged. Jack and his crew were saved by Esmeralda, whose crew helped Jack to repair his ship. A few days later, with the help of his compass, Jack found Christophe Julien de Rapier, whose help he needed to open the gates of the Zaruzan labyrinth. The wench and La Vipère sailed for Kerma, where Jack, Amynurtis, and Christophe entered the labyrinth. They found the treasure, and Jack tricked Christophe into taking a rock instead of the heart of Zazura. Believing that he had the famous jewel, Christophe sailed off. Jack, who had developed an attraction towards Amynurtis, decided not to reveal the location of Kerma to Beckett due to knowing that Beckett would enslave the inhabitants of the legendary island. A few days later, the wench returned to Calabar. Beckett, angry that Sparrow had betrayed him, ordered Sparrow to carry a cargo of slaves to New Avalon in the Caribbean for Viscount Penwallow, Beckett's immediate supervisor and patron. Jack Sparrow set off with the Wicked Wench's hold filled with slaves following his pickup, but he couldn't stand the idea of human beings as cargo, so he resolved to free them. Jack sailed back to the illusion-hidden Kerma, and the island's ruler, Pharaoh Shabako, agreed to give the slaves asylum there. Furious at being disobeyed, Cutler Beckett sent 5 EITC ships after Jack, and when he finally caught him, had Jack thrown into prison. An outlaw. After languishing for a couple of months, Beckett ordered Jack to be brought within sight of the Wicked Wench about a mile off the coast of Western Africa. Beckett and his operative, Ian Mercer, branded Jack with a P brand on his right forearm, marking him forever as a pirate. Then Beckett ordered his ship to fire on the anchored Wicked Wench, using inflammable carcass charges. Seeing his beloved wench in flames, Jack Sparrow broke free from his captors, dived into the ocean, and swam for his ship, hoping to rescue her. But it was lost as Jack was trapped in his own cabin and went down with his sunken ship. Neither dead nor alive, Jack found himself in a strange place. Knowing that he was on the path to the land of the dead, Jack spoke a magical incantation which allowed him to summon Davy Jones, the Lord of the Sea. Jack then struck a bargain with Jones. In exchange for the resurrection of the Wicked Wench, Jack promised to give up his position as captain of the Wicked Wench in 13 years' time so as to serve for a century aboard Jones' ship, the Flying Dutchman. Jack, however, had no intention of keeping his end of the bargain, having become too attached to his ship and not wanting to serve anyone. Inspired by the biblical parable of the Pearl of Great Price, he rechristened it the Black Pearl and set out for a life of adventure as a pirate. The Black Pearl. His early pirate life was the subject of many legends and rumors about his exploits, some of which were most likely mistruths possibly made up by Sparrow himself to bolster his reputation. One of these legends told of how he sacked Port Nassau without firing a single shot, while his other notable exploits included impersonating an officer of the Spanish Royal Navy and a cleric of the Church of England. He became friends with the infamous pirate Jolly Roger, who often performed unsavory deeds for the Brethren Court, in the hope of achieving a position among them. It was believed that Jack became chief of the Pelegostos in the years prior to meeting Elizabeth Swann, a tale he relayed to Mulroy and Murtaugh at Port Royal. He picked up the cannibals' language, which he again used during his second visit to their village to escape the Kraken. He also met Angelica, a novice from the Spanish convent. Jack seduced her and corrupted her, thus introducing her to the life of piracy. They had several adventures together, but their relationship didn't end well as she tried to kill him in St. Dominique. When Captain Teague left the court to become a keeper of the code, he gave his seat to Jack. But instead of becoming a pirate lord of Madagascar, Jack chose the Caribbean Sea as his domain. He tied his piece of aid into his hair, letting it dangle over his trademark bandana. Because of his position, it was possible that he kept in sporadic contact with his father. It's also known that during this time he had a sparrow tattooed on his arm to better identify himself to others as Captain Jack Sparrow. But Jolly Roger also wanted Jack's position, and he invited him to a game of poker. Jolly had to cheat to win, so he conspired with Amagi, a villainous voodoo witch doctor, to deal the cards. Jolly won hand after hand. Soon, Jack was out of money, and he bet his piece of 8 for one last hand. He won, and Jolly, thinking that he had been double-crossed, shot his partner in crime. Jack threw the table up, tossing cards and gold everywhere, and disappeared in the confusion. With his dying breath, Amagi cursed Jolly Roger to walk the earth as the undead, transforming him into a skeletal beast. Jolly swore vengeance against Sparrow and the Brethren Court, and became a leader of an undead legion. With the Black Pearl under his command, Jack recruited a crew in Tortuga, including Hector Barbossa, whom Jack named his first mate. The crew had many adventures in the time after this, but nothing could amount to what happened next. The Shadow Lord's Threat. When the evil alchemist, the Shadow Lord, created the Shadow Gold, a special liquid that grants him unfathomable power, and threatened to destroy the pirate lords of the Brethren Court, Jack was sent by Tia Dalma on a mission to recover the 9 pieces of Shadow Gold in order to stop the Shadow Lord's supernatural shadow army. During his journey around the world, Jack went to Asia and Europe, fighting with powerful organizations like the East India Trading Company and bands of thieves like the Fourth Estate. With the help of the pirate lords, Jack was able to collect all the pieces of the Shadow Gold and defeat the Shadow Lord once and for all. Mutiny on the Pearl. After the Shadow Gold adventures, the treasure of Cortés would again play a part in Jack's pirate life, as he and the crew of the Black Pearl embarked on a quest to find a cache of Aztec gold stashed by Cortés. However, before the treasure was found, the crew mutinied that night. Led by Barbossa, the crew marooned Jack on a desert island with nothing more than a flintlock pistol with a single shot for him to kill himself. Barbossa believed it would be the last they would see of Jack Sparrow. However, Jack merely resigned to his fate and discovered that the island was a secret cache for a group of rum runners, and for the next 3 days Jack cavorted with them and likely suffered little more than a severe hangover before bartering for passage off the island. This misadventure helped to build upon Jack's reputation in the Caribbean, helped along by Jack's outlandish exaggerations as to the circumstances of his escape. One version of events saw Sparrow using a couple of sea turtles as a raft to flee the island. Jack kept his single-shot pistol, making no modifications to it, but rather keeping it with the intent to use it upon his mutinous first mate, Barbossa. It was believed that Jack's altruistic nature may have been part of the reason why his crew mutinied. Indeed, Barbossa would later note that Jack's attempts at nonviolent solutions to problems was exactly the attitude that lost him the Black Pearl. Whatever the reason, the mutiny was not a unanimous agreement among the crew of the Black Pearl. Death would not come quickly for any of the crew of the Pearl. After leaving Jack marooned, Barbossa's men found the Aztec gold, but their treasure, which was soon frittered away on drink and food and pleasurable company, came at a price. They became cursed men, where in the moonlight they were shown for what they really are, walking neither alive nor dead and unable to live as normal men. William Bootstrap Bill Turner, for one, disagreed with Barbossa's decision to maroon Jack, but he too would suffer Barbossa's wrath. After sending his cursed coin to his son with the belief that they deserved to be cursed and remain cursed, Bootstrap was tied to a cannon and plunged into the ocean depths, apparently to his death. Later, Barbossa and the crew of the Pearl learned that all 882 pieces of Cortés' treasure had to be returned and repaid in blood. Escaping the island. Jack was the only member of the crew not to be affected by the curse, since he had already been abandoned by the hands of Barbossa. However, he heard tales of the curse placed upon his former crewmen, which possibly fueled his desire to achieve immortality as well as eternal freedom to sail the seas. Jack later bartered with rum runners to gain passage off of Rum Runner's Isle. The rum runners transported Jack to the town of Port Royal. Upon his arrival, Jack was penniless and had no coin to his name. Determined to find a ship to captain, Jack was given advice by the local innkeeper, who told him of local tax money being guarded around town by the city watch. Jack pilfered the money and bought himself a small sloop. Jack took an entirely new crew, and he spent much of his time plundering merchantmen out of Jamaica. Though he was hardly the most infamous pirate on the Spanish Main, he did make a good name for himself in and around Port Royal, even going so far as to find a local treasure of legend, belonging to none other than the local tavern keeper's late grandfather. The innkeeper urged Jack to find it and keep it for himself. Stealing and selling. After 8 years had passed since the mutiny against him, Captain Jack Sparrow became an infamous pirate of the Seven Seas, but he still wanted the Black Pearl as his own. Through unknown circumstances, Jack spent time with Anna Maria before leaving her, in which he stole her boat, the Jolly Mon, or as the pirate himself put it, borrowed without permission but with every intention of bringing it back. With his new boat, Jack Sparrow was free to sail the seas, ultimately ending up at Shipwreck City. At some point, Jack Sparrow traded Scarlet and Giselle fair and square to the auctioneer, who wanted brides to sell. The auction took place on the very night where both wenches, separately, believed that they were to marry Jack Sparrow. By the time they learned of Jack's deceit, the auction started and Jack sailed away on the Jolly Mon. Jack's trickery caused a great deal of trouble for the auctioneer and his clients, particularly Mungard. Before Jack Sparrow left Shipwreck City, Scarlet would have already taken 4 nails off of the Jolly Mon, just in case Jack had cold feet about their supposed wedding. This caused the boat to leak in a few areas, which forced Jack to make to the nearest port so he could find a ship more suitable to continue his quest. Arriving to Port Royal. The Jolly Mon plowed towards Port Royal, while Jack stood on the rigging, gazing keen-eyed at the harbor. Noticing that his boat was filling up with water, he jumped down to bail it out. Jack then spotted skeletal remains of 3 pirates, still clad in buccaneer rags, hanging from gallows erected from a rocky promontory, along with a 4th unoccupied gallows bearing a sign that said, "Pirates, ye be warned." Pausing, Jack Sparrow took off his hat and placed it above his heart, a moment of exaggerated respect for the doomed pirates as he sailed by them. As Jack reached the port, his boat kept sinking lower and lower until he made it to the docks, where only the mast was visible above water. Jack offered the harbor master 3 shillings to ensure his name did not appear on the ledger. The harbor master accepted the bribe, though did not notice Jack stealing his purse before the pirate swaggered away to find a suitable ship for him to sail on. Striding through the docks to commandeer the Interceptor, Jack Sparrow was accosted by 2 Royal Marines, Mulroy and Murtaugh, who were assigned to guard the Interceptor and make sure the docks stay off limits to civilians. The 2 Marines and Jack soon engage in idle conversation before they were interrupted by a young lady falling from Fort Charles. Despite his pirate nature, Jack was not about to let the girl, Elizabeth Swan, drown, and dived into the ocean to rescue her. Bringing her up to the harbor, Jack tore off her corset, allowing her to breathe. He then spied a strange coin fastened around her neck, one of the pieces of Aztec gold Barbossa's men were seeking. However, before he could explore the situation further, Commodore James Norrington arrived to arrest Sparrow. Despite having saved Governor Weatherby Swan's daughter, Elizabeth Swan, Commodore Norrington saw Jack's mark from the East India Trading Company. The governor then ordered Jack to be hanged. However, Jack held Elizabeth hostage, ensuring the return of his effects before making his daring escape. With Norrington's men in pursuit, Jack sought refuge in a blacksmith's shop, where he cut his manacles. However, he was soon confronted by the blacksmith's apprentice, William Turner, whose face Sparrow vaguely recognized, who engaged the pirate in a sword fight. Sparrow won through a mixture of skill and pirate trickery, but Turner refused to stand down. Jack was resolute he would not shoot Turner, thus wasting his single shot, and was preoccupied enough with his quandary for John Brown to knock him unconscious. When Sparrow came to, he found himself incarcerated in Fort Charles, which soon came under attack by a fog-shrouded pirate ship, the Black Pearl, as Jack immediately identified it. During the fight, as Jack was luring the prison dog to him, the pirate caller happened upon Jack's cell and inadvertently revealed to Jack the existence of the Curse of Cortés upon Barbossa's men. Jack remained in the cell throughout the attack, but the next morning was visited again, this time by Will Turner, who made a deal with Jack to help him reach the Black Pearl's port and rescue the captive Elizabeth. Jack agreed and immediately set about acquiring a ship. Escape to Tortuga. After escaping the prison, Jack Sparrow and Will Turner planned to commandeer the Royal Navy's flagship, HMS Dauntless, in order to commandeer Norrington's faster ship, the Interceptor. Sparrow and Turner used cunning and guile to board and commandeer the Dauntless, which was summarily boarded by Norrington's men. However, the pirates slipped away unnoticed and boarded the Interceptor. They then used it to flee Port Royal and leaving the Dauntless with its rudder chain disabled. The 2 pirates headed for Tortuga to find a crew for the Interceptor, for they can't crew one ship on their own. After arriving in Tortuga and some less than pleasant reunions with 2 jealous prostitutes, Scarlet and Giselle, Jack tracked down his old friend Joshua Gibbs. Jack explained to Gibbs his plan to follow the Black Pearl's trail to Isla de Muerta and use Will as leverage to reacquire the pearl from Barbossa. Gibbs agreed to the plan and helped Jack assemble a crew. After an interesting reunion with Anna Maria, Jack and his new crew set sail on the Interceptor, following Jack's navigation by his strange compass to Isla de Muerta. At some point during the journey, the Interceptor encountered the British merchant vessel Earl King, captained by McGlue. Jack and Will disguised as Royal Navy officers and boarded the King, but Captain McGlue realized that they were pirates. The crew of the Interceptor boarded the King, captured the entire crew, and looted the ship. Isla de Muerta. Thanks to the Interceptor's speed, the crew arrived at Isla de Muerta just after the Black Pearl, and Jack and Will went ashore. There, Jack witnessed the start of the ritual that Barbossa hoped would lift the curse, but complications arose in the shape of Will, who was far too impatient for Jack's liking. Jack implored Will to remain where he was so that Jack could implement his plan, but Will rashly knocked Jack unconscious and rescued Elizabeth himself. Turner took the girl back to the Interceptor, where he admitted Jack had fallen behind. Having sworn to keep the pirate's code, Gibbs ordered the crew to set sail. Meanwhile, Jack had woken up and found himself surrounded by Barbossa's pirates. Invoking the right of parley, Jack was brought before Barbossa and made a deal with him to procure the person whose blood would lift their curse. For Elizabeth's blood had no effect. Jack was brought along as the pirates set sail to pursue the Interceptor and found himself aboard his former ship for the first time in 8 years. In the captain's cabin of the Black Pearl, Jack and Barbossa were negotiating about how when Jack would reveal the name of the person's blood that Barbossa needs. When Barbossa expressed his mistrust in Jack's honesty, the former captain of the Black Pearl replied that of the two of them, he was the only one who hadn't committed a mutiny, which meant his word was to be trusted. He also sarcastically thanked Barbossa for raising a mutiny that unintentionally saved him from being cursed by the Aztec gold like him. Jack then told his former first mate a story about how he sacked Nassau without firing a single shot, and Barbossa declared the story a lovely yarn, but didn't believe a word of it. To Jack's dismay, the bosun of the Pearl came in and told Barbossa that they were close to the Interceptor. However, when he suggested to Barbossa that he attempt a negotiation with the Interceptor's crew, Jack was locked in the brig. As Barbossa said, that was the kind of attitude that had lost Sparrow the Pearl in the first place. Jack witnessed the ensuing battle from within his cell, but when a stray shot smashed the lock, he was able to return to the deck and slyly helped his crew in the fight. Noticing Barbossa's monkey making off with the medallion, Jack gave chase and once more found himself face to face with Barbossa aboard the Pearl. This time, Barbossa was not so lenient and made Jack walk the plank. Accompanied by Elizabeth, Sparrow had no choice but to make for Rum Runner's Isle, the island he had been marooned on 10 years earlier. Fortunately, Barbossa allowed Jack to keep his pistol, still with its single shot. Marooned. Jack sadly noted to Elizabeth that it was the second time he had to watch as Barbossa sailed off with his beloved ship while stranded. With the rum runners no longer operational, Jack had no plan of escape. Elizabeth then questioned Jack and his legends after being told the truth about his last escape. Jack then responded by giving her rum. However, Elizabeth proved more cunning than Jack had expected. After getting him drunk and passed out after singing A Pirate's Life for Me, she proceeded to burn the rum cache. It was through the smoke signal that she hoped the ensuing fire would attract the attention of the Royal Navy. Jack rubbished the plan, tempted to even shoot Elizabeth had he possessed more than one shot. But a short time later, help did indeed arrive in the form of the Dauntless, and both Jack and Elizabeth were rescued. This caused Jack to comment that Elizabeth would be impossible to live with. Deal with Barbossa. On board, Jack and Elizabeth persuaded Commodore Norrington to set after the Black Pearl and rescue Will, though yet again Jack had his own agenda. He coerced Norrington into allowing him to go ashore alone, and Jack once again confronted Barbossa in the treasure cave, just as the ritual began for a second time, this time with Will as the sacrifice. Jack stalled the proceedings and was able to convince Commodore Barbossa and the cursed crew to defeat Norrington before lifting their curse. During their negotiations, Jack managed to secretly steal one of the cursed coins from the stone chest. Barbossa sent all but a few of his men to attack the Royal Navy forces outside, while he, Jack, and Will remained in the cave. It was at this point that Jack showed his true colors. The immortal Captain Jack Sparrow. Stealing a sword from one of Barbossa's men, Jack threw the blade to Will, who fought Barbossa's men. At the same time, Jack pulled his sword out and engaged his former first mate in a deadly duel in which Barbossa seemed to gain the upper hand. The fight led them around the cave until Barbossa cut it short by declaring that, as an immortal, Jack could not kill him. Sparrow tried anyway, but Barbossa merely sighed at the sword plunged into his body and responded in kind, stabbing Jack in the gut. Victory was denied, however, when Jack stumbled backwards into a shelf of moonlight, transforming into a skeleton before Barbossa's shocked eyes. Holding aloft the medallion he had taken, Jack grinned triumphantly at his nemesis and began the duel anew. The duel seemed endless, though quite pointless, since both captains were immortal. When asked if they were to engage in this single duel until Judgment Day, Jack suggested that Barbossa could surrender. By this time, Elizabeth had joined Will in the cave, and working together, they had dispatched the remaining cursed pirates. Noticing Will was standing over the chest, Jack quickly cut his hand with his sword, staining his medallion with his blood and hurtling it to Will, who did the same with his coin. Barbossa aimed at Elizabeth, but Jack finally used his single shot, firing it into Barbossa's heart. Barbossa taunted him over a wasted shot, but Will revealed his own bloody coin and dropped both the coins into the chest. Barbossa then realized he had been defeated before toppling backwards, dead. Avenged and the curse now lifted from him, Jack set about searching through the treasure cave for items of particular value. However, upon his return to the open water, he discovered his crew had already departed on the Black Pearl, after Elizabeth had failed to convince them to stay and help in the fight. Jack had no choice but to accompany the Royal Navy back to Port Royal. Freedom. Arriving to Port Royal, Jack was sentenced to be executed at the gallows for his crimes. He grimly awaited his fate in the courtyard of Fort Charles. However, Will Turner was also present and staged a daring rescue of his comrade. Together, the two pirates fought Commodore Norrington's soldiers, but were ultimately surrounded by Royal Navy soldiers Norrington and Governor Swan. It was only with Elizabeth's interference and decision to stand with them that Governor Swan ordered the soldiers to stand down and lower their weapons. Seizing his chance and noticing a familiar parrot flying by, Jack Sparrow made his farewells and escape. Bragging to the soldiers, he accidentally toppled over the fort wall, falling into the harbor. Landing with a splash, Jack sputtered to the surface and gazed at the horizon. With a smile, his eyes landed on a familiar sight, the Black Pearl. Her black sails were no longer tattered and her sides gleamed in the bright sun. Grinning, Jack began to swim for it. In the face of this alarming chain of events culminating in Elizabeth's profession of love for Will, Commodore Norrington decided not to immediately pursue Sparrow, giving him a day's head start to escape. As Jack arrived close enough to be pulled in, he was brought aboard the Pearl. After regaining his hat and coat, he was once more given command of his ship by Anna Maria. He ordered the new crew of the Black Pearl to set sail, and with his compass, headed off on many other adventures on the high seas. St. Piran's Blade. The Black Pearl attacked the merchant ship which was carrying the St. Piran's Blade, a sword with supposedly magical powers. However, Mr. Colton accidentally sent the ship to the bottom of the sea. Now in need of help, Jack summoned Will Turner and Elizabeth Swan for a meeting in the Faithful Bride Tavern in Tortuga. Jack told them about the blade, but the meeting was interrupted by Jack's former crew, which had become undead once again. Will and Elizabeth were captured, but Jack managed to escape. The cursed pirates forced Will and Elizabeth onto their ship and took them to their secret hideout. They also retrieved the treasure from the ship Jack sank, including the St. Piran's Blade. The cursed pirates waited for the Black Pearl to arrive so that they could send her to the bottom of the ocean, but instead, Jack sneaked onto the fort and freed Will and Elizabeth. Jack fought against the cursed pirates with St. Piran's Blade, but when Elizabeth took it, the sword started glowing with fire because she was the only person with the heart pure enough to activate the sword's power. The cursed pirates were easily defeated and their ship was heavily damaged by the cannon fire from the Pearl. After the battle, Will and Elizabeth persuaded Jack to give them the magical blade so that they could donate it to some museum. However, Jack kept the sword's chest, which was filled with jewels. A lost treasure. When Jack went to search for one treasure which he buried before Barbossa's mutiny, he couldn't find the exact spot. To find the treasure, he had to find one of his former crew members, Scurvy Joe, who had the treasure map tattooed on his back. When Sparrow found out that Joe was imprisoned in Port Royal, he invaded the city alone. He was quickly captured and thrown into the dungeon. When he was confronted by Commodore Norrington, the naval officer commented that Jack really is the worst pirate he ever heard of. However, Jack quickly escaped with the secret help of Will Turner and Elizabeth Swan. When Joe tried to kill him, Jack easily captured him and the Black Pearl sailed to an island where the treasure was buried. 2 days later, when dawn came, the sun turned the cursed pirate into his human form, allowing Jack to see the treasure map. The Aztec Idol. When Jack learned about the mystical magical idol of Aztec origin, he sailed the Black Pearl for Mexico, where the idol was supposed to have been hidden. The information was correct. The idol was hidden in one old temple, but once he reached the temple, Jack saw his old crew, now led by Bosun, forcing Will to take the idol for them, because they were holding Elizabeth as a hostage. However, when Bosun took the idol from Will, Jack attacked him, pushed him into a deep pit, and took the idol. Will and Elizabeth disposed of Pintel and Ragetti, and the trio started escaping from the temple. Followed by angry pirates, the trio reached the beach and boarded the Black Pearl, which opened fire on the undead crew's ship, damaging it heavily. However, Jack knew that his former crew would follow the idol wherever he goes, so he decided to melt the idol and spend the gold in as many ports as possible. The Governor. Sometime later, Jack was in Tortuga once again, where he found himself chased by Norrington and his men, who were disguised in civilian clothes. Cornered in one alley, Jack had no way out, but luckily for him, Anna Maria showed up, interrupting Norrington's men, and Sparrow managed to run away. He found the carriage belonging to the governor of Tortuga, from which he took the governor's hat and cloak, easily disguising himself. When Norrington and his men encountered the governor, he threatened to arrest them as spies. Unfortunately for Jack, the real governor suddenly appeared and Jack had to run away again. Using the governor's coach, Jack managed to escape once again, and he and Anna Maria reached the harbor where they boarded a boat which took them far away from Norrington. Leading the Revolution. Sometime later, Jack and Will Turner ended up on the Isle of Lucy, a place where the cruel governor treated the colonists as if he owned them, imprisoning the innocents and confiscating their treasure. Jack and Will convinced the people of the island to organize a revolution and overthrow the governor. The people of the island, led by Jack and Will, stormed the governor's fort and Jack easily captured him, taking the keys of the treasury. However, when he and Will entered the treasury, Jack revealed that his plan was to steal the treasure for himself, not to give it to its rightful owners. However, Will convinced Jack not to steal the treasure, and because the people of the island considered him their hero, they gave him the largest share. The Black Spot. A year after his great escape from Port Royal, Jack realized his freedom came at a cost. The debt he had sworn to Davy Jones 13 years prior had still not been paid. Whether Jack had the foresight to attempt to call off the debt, or whether it was simply a coincidence, is unknown, but Jack embarked on a quest to locate the dead men's chest, which legends say contained the still-beating heart of Davy Jones. But first, Jack allowed himself to be captured by the corsairs of the Canary Islands and taken to the Turkish prison in order to obtain information he needed to solve his impending dilemma. He soon happened upon a valuable drawing of a key in a Turkish prison, giving him an advantage in his quest by figuring out that he must find the key itself. Jack was able to obtain this drawing, but soon encountered trouble and fled the island within the confines of a coffin launched out to sea. In the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, Jack used the coffin as a makeshift boat to return to the Black Pearl, where he informed his crew of his new venture. Confused, mostly because of Jack not telling exactly what to look for, the crew of the Black Pearl agreed to sail off to search for the key and what the key might unlock. That night, Jack was visited in the Pearl's cellar by Bootstrap Bill Turner, currently serving as part of Davy Jones' crew aboard the Flying Dutchman. Turner informed Jack that his time was up and Jones was calling in his debt. To reinforce this, Turner branded Jack with the Black Spot, setting fear into Jack's heart and causing him to begin his quest for the key with all haste. He was so fearful of what this debt might entail, when he lost his hat, he told his crew to leave it. It was through this fear that Jack could not bring himself even to tell his crew what forces pursued them. Running to Isla de Pelegostos. Jack knew that as long as he remained on the open seas, he was in danger, so the Pearl weighed anchor at Isla de Pelegostos, the closest body of land, and one which Jack was likely familiar with. Even here, the crew of the Pearl was not safe, as they were summarily captured by a group of cannibalistic natives. Jack was made the chief of the tribe, allowed to retain his position so long as he acted like a chief, although he found his fortunes had little improved when he learned that the natives believed him to be a god, and he would be eaten to release his spirit from its fleshy prison. Despite this, Jack played along, all the while looking for a means of escape. Meanwhile, some of his crew had already been eaten, and the rest held in cages made from the bones of their former companions. Jack's situation improved with the arrival of William Turner, seeking Jack in order to obtain his compass for Lord Cutler Beckett. Will inadvertently caused a distraction through his capture by and subsequent escape from the cannibals, which gave Jack the time he needed to flee. Jack, Will, and the surviving crew returned to the Black Pearl and set sail, though Jack refused to head into open water. Instead, he had unfinished business near Pelegostos, in the Pantano River on the island of Cuba. Tia Dalma. The crew traveled upriver in boats to the shack of Tia Dalma, where Jack hoped to find information on the key to the chest which contained Davy Jones' heart. He and Dalma had a history, and as Jack himself said, they had at one time been inseparable. It was also implied that the two had once been lovers. Upon arrival at her shack, however, Jack was somewhat perturbed to find that Dalma took more interest in Will than himself. However, Jack was able to trade Barbossa's undead monkey in exchange for information on the location of the key and details about Jones's heart. He was also given a jar of dirt, as Tia said that Davy Jones could not make port but one day for every 10 years, and so Jack would bring land in some form with him. Bargain with Jones. Armed with this knowledge, the crew set out to find Jones's ship, the Flying Dutchman. Will was summarily captured by Jones' crew after Jack told him to say, "Jack Sparrow sent me to settle his debt." Jack witnessed the encounter from his ship but was shocked as Davy Jones himself confronted him aboard the Black Pearl. He demanded Jack's debt be paid, but Jack tried to convince Jones otherwise, because of Barbossa's mutiny that happened 2 years after becoming captain of the Pearl. However, Jones pointed out that because Jack had introduced himself as Captain Jack Sparrow throughout the years, he was still captain, even though he was not on the Pearl itself. After a series of bargains, Jones agreed that, should Jack bring him 100 souls in 3 days, he would be free. As slim a chance as this was, Jack took it, and Jones sealed the deal by removing the black spot. Jack then had the Pearl's crew immediately set sail for Tortuga, noting that Jones did not specify what state the souls should be in. After arriving to Tortuga, Jack and Gibbs began recruiting crewmen for service on the Pearl in the 12 Daggers Tavern. They managed to enlist a total of 4 mariners before a bar brawl broke out, started by the disgraced former Commodore James Norrington. Jack and Gibbs managed to slip out and began preparing the Black Pearl for launch. At this point, Jack encountered Elizabeth Swan, having escaped from the custody of Lord Beckett to find Will. Jack realized Elizabeth's true desire was being reunited with Will, and he knew he could use this to his advantage. He persuaded Elizabeth that finding the dead man's chest would help her save Will, thus ensuring that when she used Jack's compass, it would point to her true desire, in order to save Will, the chest. Jack finally found a heading. Journey to Isla Cruces. The Black Pearl immediately set course for Isla Cruces, the burial site of the dead man's chest. On board the Pearl, Jack and Gibbs learned of Will's association with Lord Cutler Beckett after finding out about the letters of marque from Elizabeth. It was there that they realized the only reason Beckett wanted Jack's compass was so that he could find the dead man's chest. Jack took the documents, much to Elizabeth's annoyance, and refused to return them unless she could sufficiently persuade him to do so. Elizabeth attempted to persuade him, but Jack was immune. Later on during the journey, Jack once more approached Elizabeth while being depressed about not being married already. Jack offered her a drink and marriage with him as captain of the ship. Disgusted, Elizabeth turned down his offer of marriage. Jack then questioned her answer, stating that she would come over to his side in time. He stated that Elizabeth was curious and longed to feel the freedom and the life Jack enjoyed. In turn, Elizabeth told him she was sure one day Jack would prove himself to be a good man, and he would long for the reward of fame that would follow. Jack was indeed enticed by this, but whatever attraction may have developed between the two was soon quashed when Jack noticed the black spot had reappeared on his palm. At that moment, Gibbs sighted land, Isla Cruces, and the end of Jack's quest. Fight for the key. Upon arrival at Isla Cruces, Jack set about tracking down the dead man's chest, using Elizabeth as his guide. Jack had Norrington dig at the supposed burial site, as deigned by Elizabeth, using the compass. Her reading was correct, and Norrington soon unearthed the chest, which contained the heart that also proved Jack's claims. However, before Jack could open it, Will Turner arrived, having escaped from servitude aboard the Flying Dutchman. He refused to let Jack open the chest, wanting to stab the heart within and thus free his father from his debt to Jones. Jack, naturally, wanted the heart for himself, in order to call off Jones' Kraken, and drew his sword. It was a standoff exacerbated by Norrington's intervention, who wanted control of the heart for his own personal reasons. A three-way sword fight inevitably ensued in which Jack attempted to desperately get his hands on the key. The three-way duel progressed atop a stone church where Jack finally got hold of the key but was disarmed in the attempt. Norrington then stated with his blade pointed towards Jack his intention to kill Jack for ruining his life. However, Jack deflected some of the blame onto Will's shoulders and then fled through the graveyard with the key. Unfortunately, he was soon thrust back into battle when the two duelists dislodged an old water wheel and soon continued the fight inside and around it as it rolled through the jungle. Ultimately, however, Jack managed to hold on to the key and open the dead man's chest after taking it from the pirate Hadras. Within was Davy Jones' heart, just as Tia Dalma had said, which Jack hid inside of his jar of dirt back at the longboat on the beach. Davy Jones' crew soon caught up, and Jack became too preoccupied with fighting them off to notice Norrington studying the jar with great interest. Jack's companions were able to hold the pirates back and fled in the longboat, leaving Norrington, who instead fled into the jungle carrying the empty chest, thus distracting the pirates. Jack made it back to the Black Pearl, which launched for the open water, safe in the knowledge that he was now in possession of the heart of Davy Jones. Confrontations. As Jack had expected, the Flying Dutchman soon caught up with the Pearl, and he began taunting its captain, holding his jar of dirt aloft. Jones chased the Pearl at first, firing at it, but the Pearl soon outran the Flying Dutchman. That's when Davy Jones called upon the Kraken once more, which began its assault on the Black Pearl. Shaking the vessel, the Kraken dislodged Jack's jar of dirt, which smashed on the deck, revealing nothing inside but a pile of dirt. Desperately searching for the missing heart, which was already making its way to Cutler Beckett in the possession of Norrington, Jack realized his advantage over Jones was lost. True to his usual form, Jack turned tail and fled in the ship's lone remaining boat, seeking to escape back to the relative safety of Isla Cruces. However, despite all of the evidence to the contrary, Jack was indeed a good man at heart who knew he could not leave his crew to die in the attack, and began rowing back to his beloved Black Pearl. He arrived back on deck in time, seizing the rifle Elizabeth was trying to grab, and managed to ignite a gunpowder trap set by Will that wounded the Kraken and forestalled its attack for a moment. Jack ordered his crew into the longboat at the cost of his ship. Gibbs was shocked at Jack's decision, but the captain had seen sense. After all, she was only a ship. As the crew raced onto the longboat, Elizabeth thanked Jack for coming back to save them and leaned in for a kiss. Their kiss carried them to the mast, to which Elizabeth suddenly chained Jack. She had realized the Kraken was after Jack alone, not the rest of the crew, and this sacrifice would be the only way to ensure their survival. Jack conceded her trickery with a smile, calling her a pirate. Apparently resigned to his fate, Jack watched her leave the ship. Down with his ship. As soon as he was left alone on deck, Jack frantically tried to escape his chains. He managed to slip out of his manacles with the aid of oil from a broken lantern, though he was too late. No sooner had he freed himself than the Kraken returned, its fanged mouth rising up to deck level. The Kraken belched out a roar, spraying Jack with slime and spitting out Jack's hat, eaten prior to Jack's arrival at Pelegostos. Placing his hat once more atop his head, Captain Jack Sparrow said, "Hello, beastie." Then he drew his sword and faced off against the Kraken as it dragged the Black Pearl underwater. With that, the captain went down with his ship, and Davy Jones considered his debt settled. Jack's captainless crew returned, dejected and defeated, back to Tia Dalma's shack. There, they raised a toast to the late Captain Jack Sparrow, but Tia had not yet given up hope. She stated that there was a chance to bring Jack back from the depths of World's End, though it would entail a journey to Davy Jones' locker. The crew agreed to set out under the command of their new captain, the resurrected Hector Barbossa, a man who knew those waters well. Madness of the Locker. Jack was taken by the Kraken to Davy Jones' locker, where he was forced to endure the worst punishment he could ever take. His beloved Pearl was stuck on a seemingly endless desert. For months, Jack was tormented by a series of hallucinations that personified the various aspects of his personality as members of his crew, torturing both his love of the sea and his idea of being the only Jack Sparrow. Divided in this manner, Jack had no hope of moving his ship, as though his crew did follow orders. The flaws of his crew made the Pearl unable to make any sort of progression, with no wind to move the ship. When Tia Dalma neared the island where Jack was stranded, she enchanted the rocks on the island to teleport to the Black Pearl, and the rocks cracked open, revealing an army of rock crabs. The rock crabs used their combined strength to move the Black Pearl. Jack was off the ship at the moment, but was able to run and catch up to the Pearl, and boarded it in time to sail it out to sea. The Return of Jack Sparrow. By this point, his former crew, led by a resurrected Barbossa and aided by Tai Huang and the crew of the Hai Peng, arrived in the locker ostensibly to free Jack. Sparrow initially believed them to be mere hallucinations and greeted them with mockery, but was swayed when Elizabeth appeared and told him that they are real. As he becomes surprised, perhaps recalling the foul memory of his death, or maybe just recalling her kiss. After being told by Gibbs he was in the locker, Jack became more nervous but remained unfazed by their appearance, and even greeted his former resurrected nemesis Barbossa with cheer, knowing full well that their only means of escape, the pearl, was in Jack's possession. Sparrow is also told by what is happening in the living realm, such as Beckett using Jones to slaughter pirates and the Brethren Court holding a meeting. He refused to travel with some of them as several of them had tried to kill him before stating one of them succeeded, and noted Will was unaware of this. He picked a few of them to come with him while leaving the rest behind. However, he was forced to concede that Barbossa, holding the navigational charts bestowed upon the crew by Sao Fang, would be useful in the escape, as in the locker his compass didn't seem to work. Almost immediately, a rivalry formed between Jack and Barbossa, with both claiming to be the rightful captain of the Black Pearl. The crew boarded the Pearl and set sail on the endless seas of Davy Jones' locker, meeting Elizabeth's father, Weatherby Swan, along the way. Up is down. The crew continued to set sail through the endless seas of Davy Jones' locker, knowing if they were unable to escape by sunset, they would remain trapped in that dimension forever. Jack, however, was able to decipher one additional phrase, up is down. Puzzled at first, after listening to his shoulder angel and devil debate his future, ironically they looked just like Jack, he figured out the meaning and coerced his crew into rocking the ship back and forth. Barbossa, realizing Jack had figured out the chart, loosed the objects below deck until at last the Pearl tipped upside down under the waves. As the sun sank below the horizon, the ship returned to the world of the living at sunrise. The ship had literally been turned upside down to pass between dimensions, going from the bottom of the sea and floating all the way up to the top. As soon as the crew emerged from the locker, Barbossa pulled his pistol on Jack, leading to a tense standoff. Barbossa wanted to lead Jack to Shipwreck Cove as he was a pirate, but Jack adamantly wished to leave the pirates to their fate. This turned even Elizabeth and Will against Jack, but determined not to return to the locker, Jack pulled his pistol on Barbossa. Then it was revealed that none of the crew's pistols would work due to the wet powder of just passing through the sea. Jack and Barbossa were forced to grudgingly cooperate and made for the nearest island to find fresh water. The island the crew happened upon was the one on which the corpse of the Kraken had been left, after Davy Jones had been forced to kill it by Lord Beckett. Jack had a moment of sympathy for the creature, perhaps seeing the reflection of his own mortality in its dead eye. Jack voiced his fear of death to Barbossa, who reminded him that death, not immortality, was the only certainty. It was at this point that Jack decided to redouble his efforts to discover a way of achieving eternal life. In another turning point, Jack, who originally planned on simply running and becoming the last pirate as the EITC killed them all, finally realized that Beckett had to be stopped and agreed to meet with the other members of the Brethren Court. Deal with Beckett. However, his quest was postponed by the arrival of the Empress and the betrayal of Sao Fang. Jack and his crew were confronted by Sao Fang, who punched Jack in the nose in retaliation for a great insult paid by Jack at some point in the past. Jack was forced to give up the Black Pearl when it transpired that Captain Turner had struck a deal with Fang in order to take the ship for himself, to catch the Flying Dutchman and free his father from servitude. Jack then, realizing that his rescue was a scam, asked the crew if anyone had actually missed him. 5 members did: Marty, Cotton, Pintel, Ragetti, and Jack the Monkey. Jack was then taken aboard the HMS Endeavour, flagship of Lord Cutler Beckett, where his diminished position did nothing to dampen his creativity at negotiation. He struck his own deal, promising to lead Beckett to Shipwreck Cove and thus deliver the Brethren Court into his clutches, in exchange for Jack's freedom from both the company and from Davy Jones. Beckett, however, threatened to kill Jack to cut out the middleman, but Jack promised he would send the Brethren out to him to ensure their battle. Beckett agreed as long as Sparrow could accomplish that feat. Their final negotiations were cut short through Barbossa and Fang's agreeing upon a common enemy, resulting in the Pearl's attack on the Endeavour. Jack hastily shook on a deal, then escaped the flagship and returned to his own vessel via cannon and rope to find that Elizabeth had been given over to Fang in order for Barbossa to retain the pearl. He ordered Will Turner to be sent to the brig and had the pearl set sail to Shipwreck Cove. Journey to Shipwreck Cove. By this point, Jack found himself unable to trust Will Turner, as he escaped the brig to attempt to help Jack honor his bargain with Beckett by leaving a trail for Beckett to follow. Jack, in realizing how far apart Will and Elizabeth were growing, conceived an elaborate plan where both he and Will could get what they both wanted. Jack's plan was that he would stab the heart of Davy Jones, thereby making him immortal, ensuring his father's freedom, and Will could still be with Elizabeth. Jack then gave Will his compass, set him overboard while sending his regrets to Davy Jones, and then continued on to meeting the brethren at the Cove. Arriving at Shipwreck Island, Jack commented on the lack of originality for pirates naming things, such as Larry, a geezer he once sailed with. He also witnessed Tia Dalma being sent below deck to the Pearl's brig, perhaps while overhearing her conversation with Barbossa. When gazing at Shipwreck Cove upon arrival, Barbossa and the crew commented on how many ships were at the Cove, in which Jack realized that he owed them all money. Jack, Barbossa, and the rest of the Pearl's crewmen carried on to the meeting at Pirate Hall. The Brethren Court. During the meeting of the Fourth Brethren Court, Jack found himself at odds with Barbossa and attempted to convince the pirate lords to unite against the East India Trading Company. Whether this was playing them into the hands of Beckett or just pure logic, one can never guess. Jack skillfully used his extensive knowledge of surviving, saying they could hold up within, but it would be devastating for morale and half of them could die. He also mentioned that they could also release Calypso, as Barbossa petitioned, but Jack thought that to be too risky. Thus, he agreed with Elizabeth, who had finally joined them as the new pirate lord of the South China Sea, that they must fight. Everyone agreed to the plan, at least until Barbossa noted that the code specifically mentioned that only the pirate king can declare war. Jack thought this to be made up until Barbossa called upon Captain Teague, Jack's father, to consult the Pirata Codex. When a vote had to be made for the next king, Jack voted for Elizabeth, knowing she would support the decision to go to war. After the meeting, Jack went to confer with his father. In the reunion, Teague offered Jack advice concerning his search for immortality. It's not just about living forever, Jackie. The trick is living with yourself forever. Jack then inquired about his mother, to which Teague responded by holding aloft her shrunken, severed head. Jack responded uncomfortably that she looked great. Afterwards, Teague gave the head to Jack for him to keep, and Jack kept it on his belt. Reaching the Dutchman. With the meeting adjourned and the pirate lords decided their course of action, the fleet sailed out to meet the armada of the East India Trading Company, the Black Pearl at its head. When the pirates saw Cutler Beckett's armada and how many ships they were going against, they all turned angrily towards Jack, and sheepishly Jack called for the forces to parley. During the parley, he was traded for Will, who had been recovered by Beckett in order that his debt to Davy Jones would once again be settled. Due to his escape, the debt had technically been reset, so 100 years aboard the Dutchman were once again required. Because his plan was working, Jack was unconcerned with being sent to the Dutchman, though slightly put off by Jones. Fight with Jones. Jack was sent to the brig on board the Flying Dutchman, where he again experienced his hallucinations. Jack weakly told them to go away, but they insisted that they couldn't go back to the locker without him. Then he saw a hallucination of what he might be like as a Dutchman crewman, and one of his other hallucinations commented that defeating Jones would put an afterlife far out of reach. Jack, though, was adamant and decided to escape and steal the dead man's chest. After thinking like Will, Jack fled the brig in the same manner Will had released Jack from Fort Charles over a year before. He was then able to snatch the chest out from under the noses of its arguing guards, Mulroy and Murtaugh, in addition to recovering his effects. However, he was accosted by Davy Jones and his crew during his escape, thereby forcing Sparrow to fly up into the Dutchman's rigging, but Jones teleported to his location. There, a fierce and ferocious duel ensued between the two captains as the Flying Dutchman and the Black Pearl engaged in battle around a maelstrom conjured by Calypso. At first, Jack held his ground before Jones revealed that he held the key to the dead man's chest. Seeing this, Jack gained the upper hand by slicing off Jones' tentacle that held the key and disarming him. However, Jones broke Jack's sword and took the chest from Jack, sending him flying onto a rope where he reclaimed his pistol from one of Jones' crew. Swinging on the rope, Jack shot the chest from Jones' grip, sending it falling to the deck. The two engaged in a race to reach the chest whilst continuing their duel. While Jones was distracted by Will and Elizabeth, Jack ultimately managed to get the key to open the chest and held his broken sword over the heart. After Jones asked Will Turner his routine question, "Do you fear death?" Jack taunted him by asking Jones if he himself feared death. However, Jack was plunged into a quandary when Jones stabbed Will Turner, leaving him to die. Jack knew that the only way to save his old friend and defeat his opponent would be to allow him to stab the heart, thus ensuring Will immortality, though at the cost of Jack's own chance at the same. As Bootstrap Bill Turner snapped out of his delirium and engaged Jones, Jack fought with himself, struggling between his own dream of immortality and his one chance to save Will. In the end, Jack's altruistic nature won over as Jack forfeited his immortality. He placed his broken sword in Will Turner's dying hand, guiding it to stab the heart, killing Jones in the process. As the Dutchman's crewmen were coming towards them, Jack was forced to drag the frantic Elizabeth away from Will's body, knowing that they only had moments until the Dutchman was swallowed up in the maelstrom. While Will's heart was carved out by Bootstrap Bill, Jack rigged a makeshift parachute and fled with the distraught Elizabeth back to the Black Pearl with the other pirates. Arriving on board the Black Pearl, the rest of his crew wanted to flee the field as the ship was damaged and the Endeavor was now coming upon them. Jack, though, perhaps now determined to finish Beckett off and salvage the cause of piracy due to losing his shot at immortality, declined. And when the Flying Dutchman burst from the sea, now captained by Will Turner, Jack knew that they now had a fighting chance, and quickly readied the ship to turn on Beckett. Together, the flagship of piracy and the ship of supernatural power turned on the Endeavor, dealing a devastating dual broadside on the symbol of British power. Lord Beckett was killed in the devastation, after which the East India Trading Company Armada fled the battle. Egregious. With the battle won, Jack bade farewell to Elizabeth, who had to be with Will before he leaves to do his duty to ferry souls. He then sailed the Black Pearl to Tortuga, where he was found in the company of Scarlet and Giselle, persuading them with an offer to ride aboard his ship. However, upon returning to the harbor, Jack found the Pearl gone. Barbossa had mutinied once again by taking the Pearl, marooning him and Joshua Gibbs ashore. This didn't seem to faze Jack, however, who resorted to using a dinghy left to him. Scarlet and Giselle slapped Jack after Jack confessed many things to them, which resulted in Gibbs being slapped by Jack. To be continued. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.